Welcome back to Just Chattin, and this is the series of videos we do on Thursday and Sunday evenings just for our own entertainment. So for all you Audie fans, he's asleep. It's a lovely day today. Well, actually, it's a warm day today. Let me put it that way. It's almost 80 degrees out, which is kind of a surprise given the fact that not even a month ago we had snow on the ground. So Audie is sleeping. He may show up. He has been photobombing the videos quite a lot lately, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But in the meanwhile, we're going to get on with what we're supposed to be discussing. So we'll take a quick break for the intro, and we'll be right back. So, lots of interesting stuff going on out in California. Nutmeg and the sock puppet, Nutmeg in particular, she is definitely the focus of this story, have been trashed, basically, by Variety magazine. Now, the reason this is important is because Variety is one of those publications that is extremely well regarded and listened to. Now, Variety, when they do a story, they will cite multiple sources, they dot their I's, they cross their T's, they give everyone the opportunity to respond, they cover all their bases. They are a publication that has been an opinion maker in Hollywood for decades. If Variety says you are great, oh well, your star is rising. If Variety says you got problems, well, if you didn't have problems before Variety said so, believe me, once they say so, you are up to your neck in the duty. So let's take a look at this by casting back to the story that Variety is expressing to us, which is about how Nutmeg and the sock puppet lost their footing with Netflix. And to do that, we have to go back to Megxit. So, Megxit, Nutmeg and the sock puppet flee in the middle of the night from the evil, racist British royal family who didn't properly support them, and from the evil, racist British media who constantly violated their privacy and didn't support them, and the evil, racist British public who again didn't support them. They end up in Canada, and they were very briefly on an island retreat. They couldn't stay there because cars came up and photographed their front gate. Oh my goodness. They were in jeopardy. So Nutmeg picks up the phone, calls Tyler Perry, a man she had never met, tells him her tale of woe, and Tyler Perry says, "Come to California, and I will lend you my fabulous mansion and my security guards and everything else." So, of course, they do. But keep in mind, this was the plan all along. Nutmeg and the sock puppet never had any intention of living in obscurity on an island in Canada somewhere where the biggest threat to them was somebody showing up at the gate in a taxi or a local bird watcher getting a little too close to the fence. Once they arrive in Hollywood, everybody wants their story because they were just the media darlings, because that unsupportive, racist British media had just hyped them right up to the stars. They were just, they were everything. They were the new face of royalty. They were, oh, look, we have a biracial person in the royal family. The stories were glowing. The press coverage was fabulous. Come to California, and that shine was still on them. So they were being courted by everybody. Everybody wanted the rights to present their story. Netflix, under the leadership of Ted Sarandos, got it. Apparently, Ted Sarandos is the kind of guy who, if somebody else wants it, he's going to find a way to outbid them and get it. So he's just one of those sort of business panthers. If it's out there, he'll pounce, he'll take it home with him. And he considered this apparently quite a coup. But problems started almost immediately because no sooner did they sign the Netflix deal, which, by the way, even though it's been reported as $100 million, is generally considered to have been worth roughly $60 million. That seems to be the best estimate. Still, a whole lot of money. But since this is a deal being struck with Nutmeg, and she has a very keen understanding of her own interests, they start sharing their story, first with Oprah in the interview, and then with Random House through Spare. And Netflix at this point, at least according to the sources that Variety has interviewed, was starting to feel like they were undercutting the Netflix deal. Netflix was the one financing them, paying for these exclusive releases, and other people were getting the royal dirt. So Nutmeg and the sock puppet had their lawyers go back and say, oh no, everything was all above board. Oh well, did you expect them to say anything else? But according to Netflix insiders, that's when things started to crumble a little. Then you have the 6-part Harry and Meghan series, which did well for Netflix. There's no question about that. That was a good buy for them. However, there was no follow-up. Once Nutmeg and the sock puppet had told their tale and shared their truth about how poorly they were treated when they were in the UK, there was nothing left. So they came up with a documentary, Live to Lead, and that was already made. This was in the bag. They purchased it, slapped the Archie Well name on it, and then sold it over to Netflix. They had The Heart of Invictus, which didn't do anything. Polo, again, didn't do anything. But Sarandos stood by them all through this. And I believe there are 2 reasons for that. And this is just my personal opinion. One, I believe Nutmeg love-bombed the daylights out of him, because everyone who has been in close personal contact with her claims that she can be exceptionally charming when she wants to be. And Ted Sarandos is someone to whom she would want to be exceptionally charming because he is useful and valuable to her. If you're not useful and not valuable, it's quite a different story, but we'll get into that. So I think that was one reason. I think she just love-bombed the daylights out of this guy. Also, there is the sunk cost fallacy. It is just plain human nature. When you have invested a lot of money into a project, to stand by it in the hopes that you will have some chance of recovering that investment. That mindset is so common, it's got a name, sunk cost fallacy. In for a penny, in for a pound is the way my grandmother would have said it. So I think for Sarandos, it was actually being very flattered by Nutmeg's attention on one hand, and that whole in for a penny, in for a pound. Just stick it out a while longer, see if the tide doesn't turn. He seemed to believe that Nutmeg was marketable. Now, why would he believe that? Well, I expect it's because that is exactly what Nutmeg told him, that she has millions of fans throughout the world and all she needs is just the right opportunity. And apparently that was supposed to be the With Love Meghan cooking show. So we had this show. It was basically one giant film production, 16 episodes split into 2 8-episode seasons, and then the Christmas special. After the first season, the first half of the first season aired, it should have been very clear to anyone that the show was being critically panned and did not get anywhere near the viewership Netflix needed in order to justify the investment. Meanwhile, Netflix had also been investing in her As Ever brand, very supportive of that, including financially, because they have vast quantities of unsold As Ever merchandise. So how could they not see this as problematic? It is very likely that the decision to dump Nutmeg and Harry was made sometime after that first half of With Love Meghan was released and the initial reaction was in. So they already have the second half and they have the holiday special. So it's not as if they're going to just toss it in the trash. They've invested in it. They might as well see if they can get any kind of return on it. And they did air them both. And insiders are saying that Netflix lost money on their whole deal with Nutmeg and Harry. That would mean that whatever revenues they made on the Harry and Meghan series, that was not enough to cover the losses on everything else. And I can understand that, because according to Nutmeg, they had an 80-person film crew working on that cooking show, which is insane. I'm absolutely... When you consider that Julia Child, who I dare say is arguably the pioneer of television cooking shows, was making insanely successful programming at WGBH in a backroom kitchen with probably 3 or 4 crew available to her in the early 1960s, not even in Hollywood. This was taking place in Boston. There's almost no excuse that with an 80-member crew, you could not have come up with something Oscar-worthy. Well, I guess the excuse is you didn't have Oscar-worthy talent in front of the camera. Even with all of Netflix's clout and connections, the best they could produce in terms of a guest star on that show was Mindy Kaling. And frankly, she was the only person that, I don't want to say the only person I had heard of in those 16 episodes, well, 17 if you include the Christmas special. I had heard of some of the others, but she was the only person who I believe had any resonance with Middle America in general, because she had had a very successful television show a few years ago. Even that was not. Netflix did not pull their top stars out. Jenna Ortega was not on that show. Okay, there you go. So it was clear that Netflix was not confident enough to throw the full weight of their backing behind this endeavor. But as Variety points out, because as I mentioned before, they were dealing with many, many sources, and these sources were not people of Ted Sarandos' stature. These were lower-level executives. And what comes out of this is the usual that we have heard from everyone who works with Nutmeg and the sock puppet, that Nutmeg is the 3 Ds. She is Duchess Difficult. She is a diva. She is a dictator in high heels. They're all singing the same song. At this point, I don't see how anybody could believe anything else is happening when so many people are saying virtually the exact same thing. The stories that have come out are that Nutmeg would talk over Harry in meetings, just dismiss him utterly, grabbing the mic from him, which of course we have seen in their public appearances many, many times, pushing Harry out of the way, stepping in front of him. We see that over and over again. So why would we not believe this? Of course we do. And when she would be in Zoom meetings, if she didn't like the way the meeting was progressing, she would just get up and walk away and leave the people with whom she was having the meeting sitting at home staring at an empty screen. Now, of course, Nutmeg's spokespeople came back because, as I said, Variety gives them an opportunity to have their say. Well, she's a mother, and the children would come into the room. No, they didn't. No. First of all, I don't even know where the putative children live. And if they do, in fact, live at Nutmeg and the Sock Puppets' 16-bathroom house, you better believe there were people who could keep an eye on them for an hour or so while she's having a Zoom call. So, no, that is just absurd. But it is typical of the dismissive behavior pattern that has been articulated by everyone who has worked for them. So remember, back at the beginning, I spoke about that mansion in Canada that they stayed in when they first left the UK? Well, at that time, they had taxpayer-funded security, and those officers, and they were police officers, they were not, rent-a-cops, had complained that Nutmeg and the Sock Puppet were using them as skivvies. They were sending them out to pick up the dry cleaning, to go on coffee runs, and these were professional law enforcement officers. Skivvy. Let me just take a minute to explain that. Not everybody's familiar with that word. In the UK, the word skivvy means a peon, a lowly person doing grunt work. It comes out of the Second World War. Now, interestingly enough, in the US, we have that same word. Out of the same place, Second World War, the GIs referred to skivvies as their underwear. They referred to their underwear as skivvies. I should phrase it that way. So it gives you a sense of how poorly these officers believed they were being treated. And given everything else that has been said subsequently, I would have to say, yes, absolutely correct. People were being treated like trash. And the reason for this, of course, is Nutmeg and the Sock Puppet believe that just by showing up, they are entitled to wealth and public adulation and absolute deference and butt kissing. Make no mistake about it.
What? No, hey, get up. Listen, you've already kissed me 3 times today.
Let me kiss you again, Master.
No!
And when that butt kissing isn't forthcoming, they tend to get very, very annoyed. Remember, these are the same people who went to Invictus in Canada and told the staff they were to be addressed as ma'am and sir. So they are not just expecting fame and fortune and adulation. They are expecting fame, fortune, adulation, and like almost divine worship. And they're not putting anything on the table in exchange for that. So, is it any surprise that Netflix cut and ran at the first opportunity? Well, actually, it wasn't the first opportunity. I think they stayed with them longer than Nutmeg actually deserved. But still, shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. But then, like, this isn't enough. When it became publicly known that the deal with Netflix had collapsed, Nutmeg had to go out and say, well, she implied that she was the one who broke the deal. She's the one who walked away from them. And that was called out very quickly. But they were not supporting her. They were holding her back. And without Netflix, she was free to explore and expand and just become the superstar she was meant to be. Now, the problem with this is when Nutmeg was involved in acting, she was never at a high enough level to understand the way these things are done. And there is a way these things are done. When you and your partner in La La Land come to a parting of the ways, you speak well of them, they speak well of you. That is the unwritten rule. And there are reasons for this. You know, you don't kiss and tell. Yeah. You don't share their foibles because you don't want them to share yours. Everybody plays nice, nice, kiss, kiss. We're moving in different directions. It's not anybody's fault. We're still the best of friends. We still look forward to working with them in the future. That's how it's done, because no one wants to start dishing the dirt, except Nutmeg. Because do keep in mind, the only thing she has ever successfully done is dish the dirt. Nothing else has worked out for her. So when she started bad-mouthing Netflix, the lower levels of Netflix employees started fighting back. They started telling their side of the story. So she's got her truth, but they've got their truth. And here's the thing. Nutmeg's truth is always very much the same. Not my fault, somebody else did this. The interesting thing is, the people she's worked with, their truth is very much the same. Duchess difficult, diva, dictator in high heels. So you can see what's going on. And Netflix had legitimate reasons for needing to walk away. Nutmeg and the sock puppet had come up with no new spin that might be interesting to the public. Remember, they shot everything within the first year that they left the royal family. Once the Netflix Harry and Meghan series came out, once the Oprah interview came out, once the book Spare came out, that was it. The British royal family was no longer dealing with them. They had nothing new to sell. And consequently, the only thing they were offering Netflix, and this is according to the Netflix staffers, was the same old stories being recycled because they're no longer involved with the royal family. They have nothing new to sell. So, is it any surprise that Netflix backed away? Of course not. The only really surprising thing, at least to me, was that Nutmeg did not have the sense to be gracious when they cut her loose. And instead of saying, gee, thank you so much for not calling me an effing grifter like Spotify did, she felt the need to self-justify, blame Netflix, and fight back. You do that, they're going to respond. So that I would say was probably her biggest mistake. No. It was just her biggest mistake in terms of the fallout. The many, many, many bigger mistakes were made along the way. So that is the story behind the story. And I have so many resources for this video listed in the video notes. It took a long time to synthesize it and get what I think is an accurate and comprehensible explanation of what went wrong. So the final kicker is, what does it mean? Well, breaking from Netflix was probably very close to a kiss of death for them. But the fact that the story came out in Variety, that is, no question about it, the kiss of death. Because as I said before, a bad story from Variety seals your fate in Hollywood. Everyone reads it, everyone listens to it, everyone knows that if Variety is publishing it, they believe it to be the truth. And Variety is the opinion maker. If they say it, even if you didn't believe it before, once it comes from Variety, it's golden. So, that is what I have for you today. Thank you so much for being with us. We are going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. I hope to see you all next time, and in the meanwhile, have a terrific day.